The alarm screamed through the council chambers, a sound no one had heard in 300 years. Commander Xerxes' crystalline body pulsed with confused colors as he stared at the readings. The energy signature coming from the third planet of System Sol 3 made no sense. It registered higher than a star going supernova, yet the planet remained intact. "This must be an error," Xerxes said, his voice chiming like breaking glass. "Run the scan again." The technician, a floating blob of sentient gas named Warrel, rippled nervously. "Commander, I have run it 17 times. The signature is real. Something on Earth has activated." Earth, the primitive world that had joined the Galactic Council only 50 cycles ago. Xerxes remembered the humans well enough. Small bipedal creatures who talked too much and asked uncomfortable questions during council meetings. Their technology was adequate, but unremarkable. They had nothing that could produce this kind of energy. What could generate such power? Asked Counselor Thex, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "A weapon test?" "The signature matches old legends," Worrell said quietly. "From the dead civilizations, before they went extinct." The chamber fell silent. Every species in the council knew those legends. Stories of fire that burned between stars. Of creatures so powerful they needed no ships, no technology. Dragons, they were called in most translations. Myths told to children, nothing more. "Ridiculous," Xerxes said firmly. "Prepare my ship. I will investigate this personally." 2 hours later, Xerxes' reconnaissance fleet approached Earth. He had brought 5 ships, enough to handle any reasonable threat. In the crew quarters sat Dr. Alana, a human xenobiologist who had been aboard the council station when the alert sounded. Xerxes had requested her presence to help with cultural context, but Ilana seemed strange during the journey. She barely spoke. Her hands trembled when she looked at the data screens. Xerxes found her in the observation deck, staring at her home planet with an expression he couldn't read. "Dr. Alana, you seem distressed," Xerxes said. "Is something wrong?" She turned to him, her face pale. "Commander, I need to tell you something. The legends you mentioned about dragons. On Earth, we have the same legends. All primitive species have dragon myths," Xerxes replied. "It means nothing. No, you don't understand." Ilana's voice dropped to a whisper. "What if they're not myths?" Before Xerxes could respond, the ship lurched violently. Every screen went dark. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in red. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, high with panic. "Commander, systems failing. Heat signatures off the scale. Something's coming." Xerxes rushed to the bridge. Ilana closed behind him. Through the main viewport, he saw Earth hanging peaceful in the void. Then he saw the Carpathian Mountains, glowing like a wound in the planet's surface. A crater, massive and recent, still radiating heat that his sensors could detect from orbit. Where did that come from? Xerxes demanded. "Was there an impact?" "No impact, Commander," the pilot said. "Something came out. Something flew up from inside the planet." "That's impossible. Nothing can fly in vacuum without." The ship's hull groaned. Metal screamed. Xerxes felt heat through the walls, heat that should have been impossible with their shielding active. The temperature climbed higher and higher. His crystalline body began to soften at the edges. Then he saw it. Through the viewport, something moved against the stars. It was enormous, larger than his ship, larger than anything living had a right to be. Wings spread wide, each one trailing fire that burned without fuel, without oxygen, burning in the empty void where nothing should burn. Scales reflected starlight like mirrors. Eyes, ancient and intelligent, fixed on the fleet with the focus of a predator. The creature opened its mouth, and Xerxes saw fire building in its throat, fire that glowed with colors that hurt to look at. Then words filled his mind. Not sounds, not language as he knew it, but meaning pushed directly into his consciousness. Every member of his crew heard it simultaneously, understood it perfectly, despite speaking 12 different languages. You have trespassed. Leave or burn. The voice was old. So impossibly old. It carried weight, authority, the certainty of something that had existed since before the Council. Before most civilizations, before time meant anything at all, Xeruses tried to speak. To explain they meant no harm, but his voice wouldn't work. Fear locked his thoughts. This was a dragon. The legends were true. Every nightmare story told by a dozen extinct species, true. The creature moved closer. Its wings beat once, propelling it forward without air resistance, defying physics. The fire around its body intensified. Xerus's shields began melting like wax. Hull plates buckled. His pilot screamed something about engine failure. Retreat. Xerus managed to shout. All ships, retreat now. The fleet scattered, running at maximum speed. Behind them, the dragon watched. It didn't pursue. It didn't need to. It had made its point. The space where the fleet had been hovering moments before erupted in a column of fire, a warning shot that would have vaporized them all as they fled beyond the moon's orbit. Xerus looked back. The dragon was returning to Earth, its massive form descending toward the crater. But now he saw something else. More heat signatures scattered across the planet's surface. 17 in total. All of them beginning to rise. All of them waking up. Ilana stood beside him, tears running down her face. I tried to warn you, she said softly. They're waking up. All of them. And nothing in the universe can stop what comes next. The council chamber erupted in chaos. 300 species, all shouting at once in languages that the translators struggled to keep up with. Xerus stood at the center of it all, his crystalline body dim with exhaustion, watching the footage play again on the massive screens. The dragon, wreathed in impossible fire, speaking directly into minds. Order! High Counselor Vexinar slammed his gavel, a sonic pulse that silenced the room. Commander Xerus, your report states there are 17 more of these creatures on Earth? Yes, High Counselor. All showing signs of awakening. Xerus projected the thermal scans. 17 bright spots across Earth's surface, each one growing hotter by the hour. If one dragon can destroy a fleet, 17 could destroy civilizations. They already have, said Elder Historian Quill, pulling up ancient records. These creatures appear in the death records of the Catharis Empire, the Burning Suns Dynasty, the Hive Collective. Each civilization showed signs of dragon activity before going extinct. We assumed the legends were metaphorical. We were wrong. Council of Vex leaned forward. The humans. They joined the council 50 cycles ago. They never mentioned dragons. Because they hid it, Xerus said bitterly. Dr. Ilana knew. She tried to warn me, but I didn't listen. Bring her in, Vexinar ordered. Now, guards escorted Ilana into the chamber. She walked with her head high, despite the hostile stares from hundreds of alien eyes. She looked small and fragile compared to the massive species around her, but her expression remained calm. Dr. Ilana, Vexinar said coldly, you are accused of withholding vital information during Earth's integration process. Explain yourself. Ilana took a deep breath. With respect, High Counselor, we didn't withhold anything. We simply didn't advertise what you wouldn't have believed. Would you have accepted Earth into the Council if we had said we share our planet with dragons? You should have disclosed it regardless, Dex snapped. This is a threat to the entire galaxy. They're not a threat, Ilana said firmly. They're our partners. The chamber exploded again in disbelief. Vexinar had to use the gavel 3 more times before order returned. "Explain this partnership," Vexinar demanded. Ilana nodded. "Thousands of years ago, when humanity was young, the dragons walked openly among us. They were powerful beyond measure, but they didn't conquer us. Instead, they made an offer. They would sleep, hidden from the universe, while humanity grew and matured. When we were ready, when we had proven ourselves worthy, they would wake. And we would stand together, not as master and servant, but as equals." "Proven yourselves worthy of what?" Zeros is asked. "Of being their partners. Of being trusted with their power." Ilana's eyes swept across the chamber. Dragons don't choose their allies lightly. They test them across centuries, watching how they handle power, conflict, choice. Humanity passed their test. "This is insane," Councillor Brath growled, his tusks scraping together. "You're saying you made a deal with weapons of mass destruction? They're not weapons. They're people." Ilana's voice rose. "Ancient, powerful people who have seen civilizations rise and fall. They remember things the rest of the universe has forgotten." Military advisor Krent projected battle scenarios onto the screens. These ancient civilizations that fell. The records show complete destruction. Cities burned to ash. Populations eliminated. If these dragons wake and decide humanity isn't worthy after all, Earth dies. And if they spread beyond Earth, the Council dies with it. "Then what do you propose?" Ilana asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Preemptive strike," Krent said bluntly. "Before all 17 wake. Target the thermal signatures. End this threat while we still can." The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Ilana's face went pale, but before she could speak, the chamber doors opened. A human walked in, tall and gray-haired, wearing a crisp military uniform. General Marcus Chen, Earth's ambassador to the Council. "You will not touch them," Chen said calmly, his voice cutting through the noise. He walked to the center of the chamber without waiting for permission, standing beside Ilana. "I heard your proposal, Advisor Krent. It's suicide." "We have the firepower to," Krent began. "You have nothing that can stop a dragon," Chen interrupted. Commander Zeros has learned that the hard way. His fleet was lucky. Paraxis was feeling merciful. She could have ended them without effort. "Paraxis?" Vexinar asked. "The dragon you met," Chen explained. "Her name is Paraxis, and she's the eldest. The others respect her authority. She's also on her way here." Panic rippled through the chamber. Guards moved toward their weapons. Chen held up a hand. "Relax." She requested an audience. "She's not here to fight." He smiled slightly. "She's riding in one of our transport ships. Couldn't fit inside it, obviously, but she's following it here. Should arrive in about 20 minutes. You brought a dragon to Council Station?" Vex shrieked. "She was coming anyway," Chen said. "I just gave her directions." He turned to face the entire council. "You want to know why dragons chose humanity? Because we're stubborn enough to stare extinction in the face and crack jokes about it. Because we've spent our entire history being too weak to dominate, so we learn to adapt instead. Because we know what it means to be monsters, and we choose every day to be something better." "Beautiful words," Vexinar said coldly. "But words won't protect us if these creatures decide to burn the galaxy." "Then listen to what Paraxis has to say," Chen replied. "She's about to tell you a story about the civilizations you think she destroyed. About why they really died. About what's coming that's worse than dragons." He looked at the screen showing Earth, where 17 thermal signatures pulsed like heartbeats. The dragons didn't wake up because humanity called them. They woke up because something else is coming. Something they fought before. Something they sealed away. And the seals are breaking. Part 3 Paraxis barely fit in the docking bay. Her massive form coiled like a cat, wings folded tight against her scaled body. Fire flickered between her teeth as she breathed, each exhale warming the room by several degrees. Security forces surrounded her, weapons ready but useless. Everyone present knew the truth. If Paraxis wanted them dead, they would be ash before they could blink. She watched them with eyes older than most species' entire histories. Then she spoke, her words filling every mind in the station simultaneously. I am Paraxis, last of the Burning Court. I have come to correct your misunderstanding of history. Vexinar stood on the observation platform, trying to project authority despite the fear radiating from his body. You destroyed civilizations. The records are clear. The records are incomplete, Paraxis replied. Let me tell you what they don't say. Her mind touched theirs, and suddenly they saw. Not words, but memories, sharp and clear as if they were living them. An empire of crystalline beings, beautiful and advanced, spreading across 12 systems. But underneath the beauty lay rot. Slave camps where conquered species died by the millions. Experiments that twisted living creatures into weapons. Children taken from their parents and broken into soldiers. The Catharis Empire, Paraxis's voice echoed through the vision. Your records call them advanced, peaceful, a golden age of science and art. They were slavers. They bred entire species like cattle. When their slaves rebelled, the Catharis planned to exterminate them all. We stopped them. The vision shifted. A world burning, but now they could see clearly. Dragons weren't killing the innocent. They were destroying weapons facilities, military installations, the infrastructure of genocide. The Catharis fought back with planet killers, with biological weapons, with technology designed to eliminate entire species at once. The dragons stopped them all. We ended them, Paraxis said simply, as we have ended others like them throughout history. We are not conquerors. We are the fire that cleanses corruption when it grows too powerful to stop itself. The visions faded. The council members stood in stunned silence, processing what they had seen. Elder Historian Quill was the first to speak, his voice shaking. The records. They were written by the Catharis allies, by species who benefited from their empire. They lied. They preserved their version of history, Paraxis corrected. But yes, they lied. Her eyes swept across the council. We sleep between ages because our power is dangerous. We wake only when the balance tips toward darkness. When evil grows so strong that ordinary species cannot stop it alone. Why humanity? Councilor Vex asked. Why did you choose them? Paraxis turned her massive head toward General Chun, who stood calmly despite being close enough to touch her scales. Humanity has potential. They understand darkness because they carry it within themselves. Every human knows they could be a monster if they chose. They live with that knowledge every day. And every day, most of them choose differently. Most, Zeros said carefully. Not all. No species is perfect, Paraxis acknowledged. Humans wage wars. They commit atrocities. But they also stop their own wars. They judge their own atrocities. They build monuments to their victims and teach their children to be better. They struggle, constantly, painfully, to rise above their nature. Dragons respect that struggle. Beautiful philosophy, Advisor Krent said harshly. But you still haven't explained why you're waking now. What threat justifies activating 17 weapons of mass destruction? Paraxis's eyes flashed, fire spilling from her jaws. You want to know what's coming? Then watch. The vision slammed into them like a physical blow. Space itself tearing open, reality bleeding at the edges. Things emerging from the wound, creatures that hurt to look at. They had no solid form, shifting between dimensions, present and absent simultaneously. Where they passed, matter dissolved. Not destroyed, not exploded, simply unmade, ceasing to exist as if it had never been. Ships fired weapons that passed through the creatures harmlessly. Energy beams, missiles, kinetic rounds, all useless. The creatures touched a station, and the station vanished. Millions of lives gone in an instant. "The Voidborn?" Praxis said, her mental voice grim. "They consumed 3 galaxies in the ancient past. When all species stood together and still could not stop them, the dragons made a sacrifice. We bound ourselves to the fabric of reality and created seals to hold the Voidborn in their dimension. It cost us everything. Most of my kind died in the binding. We few who remained went into deep sleep to maintain the seals across millennia. The vision showed dragons, hundreds of them, wrapping themselves in chains of pure energy. Their screams echoed across dimensions as they poured their life force into barriers between worlds. One by one, they fell silent, their bodies dimming, turning to stone. We held the seals for 50,000 years, Praxis continued. But now they're failing. The Voidborn are pushing through. Small breaches at first, but growing larger. In 10 cycles, maybe fewer, the seals will break completely. The Voidborn will return. And this time, there are only 17 of us left to stop them. That's why you woke, Ilana said softly. You felt the seals weakening. Yes, and we need allies. Praxis looked at the council. Your technology is more advanced than anything from our time. Your weapons, while useless against Voidborn, could be adapted. Combined with Dragonfire, which can burn across dimensions, we might have a chance. Vexinar's voice was barely a whisper. You're asking us to fight creatures that unmade 3 galaxies. I'm telling you they're coming whether you fight or not, Praxis said bluntly. You can die cowering, or you can die fighting. If you're lucky, you might even survive. An alarm screamed through the station. Red lights flashed. A technician's voice cracked over the intercom. Dimensional breach detected. Sector 7, near the Nexus colonies. 50,000 civilians. Something's coming through. Every screen in the station switched to the same feed. Space was tearing open like paper. Through the wound, they saw a darkness deeper than void. And in that darkness, shapes were moving. The Voidborn had arrived. The Nexus Gate colony died in 7 minutes. The Council fleet arrived in 8. By then, the station was simply gone, along with 50,000 people. No debris, no bodies, no evidence it had ever existed. Just empty space and a slowly closing dimensional rift. Admiral Cross stared at the void where his cousin had lived, his 3 hearts pounding. Fire everything, he ordered. Close that rift. The fleet opened up. Energy cannons, plasma torpedoes, graviton charges, every weapon humanity and the Council species had developed. The beams passed through the Voidborn like they were ghosts. The creatures didn't even slow down. They flowed toward the nearest ship, a destroyer carrying 300 crew. The ship captain's last transmission was a scream. Then the destroyer ceased to exist. Retreat, Cross shouted. All ships fall back. The fleet scattered. Behind them, dozens of Voidborn poured through the rift. They moved through space impossibly fast, ignoring physics, ignoring reality itself. They were spreading, hunting, unmaking everything they touched. On Council Station, the command center had become chaos. Vexinar watched feeds from 17 different sectors, all showing the same horror. Rifts opening. Voidborn emerging. Colonies going dark. How do we fight them? He demanded, turning to Praxis. The dragon's eyes blazed. You can't, but I can. She unfurled her wings. Tell your ships to clear a path. And get me the coordinates of every rift. You're one dragon against hundreds of those things, Krent protested. I'm one dragon right now, Praxis corrected. In 20 minutes, I'll be 17. She launched herself from the station, fire trailing behind her. Through the viewport, they watched her accelerate impossibly fast, crossing distances that should have taken hours in minutes. Her body blazed brighter than a star. General Chun stepped forward. "Advisor Krent, I need control of Earth's military fleet." "Your primitive vessels can't hurt these things," Krent said. "No, but we can buy the Dragon's time." Chun pulled up tactical displays. "Our ships might not be able to kill Voidborn, but we can predict their movements, draw them into kill zones, provide targeting data. We're good at working with dragons." "He's right," Ilana said, pulling up projections. "Look at the Voidborn movement patterns. They're predictable if you know what to look for. They target the largest concentrations of matter first. We can use that." Vexinar made a decision he knew might end the council. "Do it. Give Earth's military full tactical control. All ships will follow their coordination." Chun's fingers flew across controls. "All human vessels. This is General Chun. Execute Protocol Dragon's Shield. We're going to show the galaxy what humans and dragons can do together." Across human-controlled space, ships moved into position. They weren't fleeing. They were attacking. Not the Voidborn directly, but hurting them, using themselves as bait to lure the creatures into specific vectors. Paraxis reached the first rift, her fire blazing white-hot. She opened her jaws and breathed, but this wasn't normal fire. It was reality made solid, existence itself weaponized. Where her flames touched the Voidborn, they burned. Actually burned, consumed, destroyed. The creatures shrieked in frequencies that shattered sensors. "It's working!" Zerosis shouted. "The dragonfire can hurt them." But there were too many Voidborn, and Paraxis was just one dragon. She fought magnificently, burning dozens, but hundreds more poured through the rifts. A destroyer captain named Richards saw Paraxis surrounded, 3 Voidborn converging on her position. He made a choice. "All power to engines," Richards ordered. "Ram speed." His ship screamed toward the Voidborn at maximum velocity. He couldn't hurt them, but he could get their attention. The creatures turned toward this new target. Paraxis gained precious seconds, enough to incinerate 2 more Voidborn. Richards' ship vanished before he could even scream defiance. But his sacrifice mattered. It gave Paraxis time to reach orbit above a planet where the second dragon was waking. Vortex rose from the ocean, water cascading off her scales, and joined her sister in the sky. 2 dragons, burning side by side. One by one, the others woke. Cross watched from his command ship as 17 pillars of fire rose from Earth, shooting into space like reverse meteors. The dragons spread across the battle space, coordinating with the precision of a mind that thought in centuries. Human ships flew patterns that looked suicidal, drawing Voidborn into formations where dragons could destroy multiple targets with single strikes. Council vessels, following human tactical coordination, adapted their weapons. They couldn't kill Voidborn, but they could create gravitic fields that slowed the creatures down, held them in place for dragonfire. The battle raged for 3 days. Millions died. Entire fleets were unmade. But slowly, impossibly, they were winning. The rifts were closing as dragons burned the weak points in reality, sealing the breaches with their own life force. The Voidborn numbers dwindled. Dr. Ilana worked around the clock with Paraxis, analyzing the ancient seals. "The main anchor," she said finally. "It's in Voidborn-controlled space, deep behind their lines. If we can repair it, we can reseal them completely. But reaching it is suicide," Chun finished. "Then that's where we're going." He assembled a volunteer force. 15 dragons. 1,000 human marines. Every single one knew it was a one-way trip. They launched anyway. The Voidborn armada filled the space between them and the anchor point. Chun's fleet punched through, losing ships with every kilometer. The dragons burned paths through the darkness, but there were too many enemies. The formation collapsed. Ships scattered. Chen's vessel, battered and dying, limped toward the anchor. Paraxis flew beside him, her scales scorched, her fire dimming. Behind them, 900 Marines were already dead. The remaining 100 held the lion ships that were more wreckage than vessel. "Almost there," Chen said, blood running down his face from a head wound. 60 seconds. A wave of Voidborn converged on them. Paraxis turned to meet them, fire blazing one last time. Chen reached the anchor, a structure of solidified reality that hurt to look at. He activated the repair sequence that Ilana had programmed. Reality snapped. The anchor pulsed, sending waves of energy across dimensions. Every Voidborn in existence screamed as the seals reformed, pulling them back into their prison. The rifts collapsed. The darkness retreated. The backlash should have killed everything in the system. Should have unmade Chun and Paraxis and everyone else. But the dragons knew this would happen. At the last moment, all 17 pooled their power, creating a shield around the survivors. The energy washed over them, through them, but left them intact. When the light faded, Chun found himself floating in space, his ship gone. Paraxis drifted beside him, her fire barely a flicker. He could see Earth in the distance, whole and beautiful.